welcome to this second installment of Damaged Networks. My name is Mike Rogers, and I'm an independent researcher and amateur astronomer. For this episode, we're going to be talking about the moon and the interesting anomalies, or moonomalies, as I like to call them, that are present there and pretty much have been right from the beginning. I mean, from the time Galileo put together the first telescope, I think it was back in like 1610 or something, we've been seeing weird stuff on the moon. And even before, there was always these transient lunar phenomenon that were going on. But it really became apparent and very noticeable once the telescope was put together. And more people were looking at the sky and looking at the moon in particular, especially with the early telescopes. They weren't the best things in the world. So the moon is an object where if you have a small telescope, you can resolve quite a bit of detail because it's fairly close to us. And actually, what I like to do, I like to take I have a small camera. Well, it's not a small camera. It's a decent camera. I like to photograph the moon, and it's an interesting subject to photograph, and it's sometimes it can yield some interesting results. Other than this photo, this is a picture I took of the moon myself. We're not going to see any of my lunar photography today. We're mainly going to be talking about the Clementine Mission, which was launched January 25th in 1994, and it was a joint mission. It was as far as missions to the moon go, as far as missions to anywhere in outer space goes. This one was unprecedented because the Pentagon was directly involved with it. The Ballistic Missile Defense Organization and NASA got together in a joint venture to map the moon, which that's interesting in itself. But it was under the jurisdiction of the Pentagon, and it was, I believe, overseen by the Department of the Navy. In fact, if you go to the Department of the Navy's website, you can obtain maps of Clementine. Although that wouldn't be the place I would suggest to go. The highest resolution maps that I've found from the Clementine Mission reside at the United States Geological Survey website, and they provide very high resolution maps of the moon. And the images that you're going to see, and the images that I've shown in my little acid trip cartoon at the beginning of this, the images that you saw there were mainly from the Clementine Mission, with the exception, I believe, one of the anomalies I showed in the beginning was from the Apollo mission, the first Apollo mission. But we're going to be dealing mainly today with the Clementine Mission that was launched in '94. And again, a very interesting mission in the sense that the Department of Defense was involved with it. I mean, why is the military mapping the moon? Another subject for another time, maybe, but it is an interesting question.
Interplanetary investigator Colonel Bleak and his space deputies Squeak and Scratch floated to a stop just above the surface of the moon. They were searching for some trace of the terrible Dr. Destructo among the thousands of crater marks that dotted the strange landscape. To Bleak, it appeared that these craters might have been caused by thousands of meteors crashing down at terrific speed. But many scientists believe the strange markings are the scars of a tremendous bubbling action caused when hot internal gases escaped to the outer surface back when the moon was soft and pliable.
Okay, just to give everyone a little bit of perspective about our conversation. The moon is the only natural satellite of the planet Earth, and it is the 5th largest satellite in the solar system. It's the largest satellite of a planet in the solar system relative to the size of the world it orbits. It's unprecedented how large our moon is in comparison to the Earth. It's about a quarter of the size of the Earth, which, again, we don't normally see that. If you look at the planet Jupiter and its moons, I've heard the comparison, a grain of sand next to a beach ball. That's accurate. You know, moons are generally tiny little things compared to the worlds that they're orbiting. So the fact that the moon is so large compared to the Earth, absolutely unprecedented, and you don't really see it other than the Pluto-Charon relationship. And, well, Pluto's no longer a planet now, is it? But that's neither here nor there. As far as planets go, the Earth-Moon system is unprecedented in the solar system. You just don't see it anywhere else. As I said, the moon is approximately a quarter of the diameter of the Earth and has 1/50th of the Earth's volume, and has a little bit more than 1/80th of the Earth's mass. And compared to other moons in the solar system, as I said, it's pretty dense as well. You know, it's actually the second most dense satellite in the solar system. The only one that has a higher density would be Io, which is one of the large Galilean satellites of Jupiter. The moon's orbit is in a synchronous rotation with the Earth, and that's why it always shows us the same face. You'll always see the same 60% of the moon's surface from the Earth, because it's tidally locked to the Earth. The moon is thought to be about 4.5 billion years old. Some people believe it's older. Some evidence shows it's older. That's not relative to our discussion, but it is an interesting, as my 7th grade social studies teacher used to say, it's an interesting tidbit, and I'll throw it out there. There are many schools of thought as to how and where the moon formed. Nobody really knows for sure. I don't care who says what. You know, there's a lot of ideas, a lot of theories. Unless you were really there, you don't really know. Now, the moon has the moon's distinctive Earth visible near side is marked by dark volcanic moria. That's the dark areas that you see on the moon. In ancient times, they're named moria. Actually, that comes from the Latin word mare, which means seas. And I had mentioned Galileo before. In those times, like in the 1600s, probably even before, but I seem to remember reading about it when reading about Galileo Galilei. The word moria comes from mare, Latin for seas. People for centuries believed that the moon, the dark areas of the moon, were actually dark oceans on the surface on the lunar surface. And well, if you go to there's no such thing as a dark side of the moon. My apologies to Pink Floyd fans everywhere. I actually love Floyd. There's no dark side of the moon. There is a far side of the moon. It's the 40% of the moon that you cannot see from the surface of the Earth. And in very stark contrast to the near side, there are virtually no Mariah. If you were to look at a picture of the planet Mercury and the far side of the moon, they're practically indistinguishable from one another. In fact, Mercury's only about, I believe, using English measurement, Mercury's about 900, in and around a little over 900 miles greater in diameter than our moon. They're very similar looking, very similar looking bodies. There's no known atmosphere on the moon and no active geology. The only known weather occurring on the moon, and I want to establish this for later discussion, the only known weather on the moon comes from a constant, relentless bombardment of meteoric debris from space and solar wind. There's no atmosphere, there's no wind, there's no weather, there's no rain, there's nothing. You know, the moon, I had read it. I'm a big fan of Stephen King, and as a kid I owned a copy of Night Shift, his collection of short stories. There's this wonderful story in there, and to quote Stephen King, the moon is like a skull that's been picked clean. And I believe that's a wonderful, very accurate, in my opinion, description of the lunar surface. The moon is essentially, in my mind, a failed world, which I'll go into, I'm sure, later. But that is what our moon is. And hopefully that'll give you some background as to what we're going to be talking about. Now again, in '94, the Defense Department and NASA got together, put together the Clementine Mission, and sent that in orbit around the moon to map the lunar surface. The pictures that came back were startling. I mean, there are several good films, good websites devoted entirely, practically, to what Clementine brought back. The anomalies. I believe that the anomalies I'm going to be showing here today are ones that have been overlooked, ones that I feel are new. I haven't seen them, and I like to watch this stuff a little bit more than I care to admit. But yeah, there's plenty of anomalies for everybody, plenty of moonomalies for everybody. I mean, the moon is chock full of them. And the first picture I want to look at right now is what is this? Okay, this is a light on the edge of a crater. You can clearly see the beams of light shining down into the crater. What is that? Who's on the surface of the moon shining lights in the craters? Is there a football game going on down there? I mean, or the, lower gravity. I mean, there's, you could kick a football like 3 or 4 miles across a crater. I mean, what's going on? That's an interesting one. I came across that actually when I first started looking at Clementine images, and it's like, huh? What's that? That's nuts. But yeah, that's our first image. You know, that's our kickoff image, you might say. Light shining down into the crater. I don't know what that's about. I don't like to speculate too much. As I mentioned in episode 1, when you start looking at different images that NASA returns to us from solar system missions, it's very, very easy to let your imagination run away with you when you start enhancing things. You know, I'm not a scientist. I'm not even pretending to be a scientist. I do understand the principles of scientific method. I know that. I don't necessarily allow myself to be governed by them, you know, because, I mean, well, I'm not a scientist, and I don't pretend to be a scientist. If you want to call me anything, I'm an interested citizen of the United States. I'm a taxpayer. My money, you know, I work 3 months out of the year, essentially, to help fund these missions. I mean, in part. There's other things, certainly other places where my tax money goes, I'm sure. But part of where my tax money goes is into funding NASA. And I don't believe that our National Aeronautics and Space Administration is entirely truthful with not just the American public, but with the world. But I think we do see glimmers of truth here and there. And here's truth glimmering on the edge of a crater on the moon, casting light down into the crater. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I don't know who it is. I don't know what they're doing there. I don't know if somebody fell into the crater and they're looking for them. I don't, you know. But there's a light on the edge of the crater, and it's shining down into the crater. I had shown this picture to someone, and they said to me, well, okay, it's light out, so that means the sun's up. That means, you know, I want to clarify that before anybody asks me that question again. Yes, the sun is out. I can't tell exactly from this picture how high in the sky it is, but it would be kind of irrelevant. There are craters on the moon that are in permanent shadow. There are areas of the moon, I should say, in craters that are in permanent shadow because the sun can never get there. Again, no atmosphere. And the Apollo astronauts discovered that the moon is a really poor conductor of heat. The material that's there does not conduct heat well. It has very poor reflectivity. Well, the moon's the brightest thing in the night sky. But yeah, compared to what? You know, that's the term for that would be albedo. And the moon actually has a pretty low albedo. If you were to put an object, say Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, which has a very dense, soupy atmosphere, Titan would be a much better reflector than the moon because the sun would be reflecting off of gas. So the moon, our moon is a very poor source of reflection, and it's a very poor conductor of heat. So there are areas of the moon that are permanently cast in shadow. In fact, some of the coldest temperatures in the solar system have been recorded on the moon. And again, that's because there are simply just areas that are in permanent shadow. They never see sunlight. So that could be a reason why somebody would be shining a light into a crater. What are they looking for in the crater? I don't know. Did somebody fall in? Are there mining operations, as some people say? If you're going to speculate, I'm going to go with the fun speculation. I'm going to say that there is a football game going on in the crater, and if you're going to kick a football, then you can kick a football pretty far on the moon. That's my bet. That's what I'm going to go with. Our next picture. This one just struck me as bizarre. Initially, I was attracted to it because the crater itself looks like a globe. I mean, it looks like not the Earth, but I mean, you can see like light areas, dark areas, areas that would resemble continents and stuff. It looks like it's a globe laying flat, which is actually initially what attracted me to it and why I started looking closer at it. When I got closer into it, that's when I figured out, well, hey, there's like straight lines sticking up out of this thing. There's like a little forked line. I'll tell you what, if you don't see it, here it is. I circled it in red. You can see what I'm talking about. That structure, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what kind of structure that is. I know there shouldn't be straight lines sticking up out of craters. Unless there's some kind of micrometeoric phenomenon that they're not telling us about. Again, speculation is fun. It's fun to let your imagination run wild and say this is this and this could be this. I don't like to go there, and it's very easy to go there. But I like you to look at these things and make up your own mind and make your own discernments. What could it be? Again, I have my ideas, but I'm going to leave it up to you. I don't want to taint your perspective here with what I'm seeing. Well, you can argue, like in episode 1, that I was kind of, really pushing towards, hey, that's a face on Mars. That one's obvious, so I'm not gonna. This one's a little bit more abstract. I have my ideas of what this is. I have my own, theories, if you want. Well, theories would be the wrong word. I have my own hypotheses as to what this could be. But I'm gonna let you look at it, make up your own mind, make your own discernment, and we'll leave it there. But straight lines sticking up out of craters. What's it about? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's about, when you get right down to it, that is probably the best answer. It's odd. And really, that's why I'm showing it to you. I mean, it's an odd thing. Okay. Now this one, I don't even know what to say. When I came across this, if you look to the lower, what would be your lower right hand side? What is that object? This one I am going to speculate on. That's not a crater. That's not caused by weather. Or I'm sorry, not weather, but that's not caused by micrometeorite bombardment. that's not caused by a rock falling out of the sky and kicking up a plume of lunar soil. That's not solar winds. That's an object. That looks like, I would dare say to speculate that that looks like a broken piece of machinery. There are some kind of sectioned tendrils coming off of the left side of it. Half of it's in shadow, half of it is in light. If you look at the area around it, there is only one other object that's reflecting in a similar manner. And that's to the top of the image. And that's reflecting even brighter. And again, there are craters all over this picture. You can see what a crater looks like next to it. That's not caused. That is not caused by any sort of I'm at a loss, you know. I mean, how does a meteorite do that? You know, there are plenty of evidence of meteorite strikes on the moon. Plenty of impact evidence, plenty of ejecta, plenty of what I've heard other researchers call, there are pyramids on the moon. No, there's not. Well, okay, I'm not going to go there. But what I've seen other researchers call pyramids on the moon are center ejecta that it's a perfectly natural process. You can look at any impact crater anywhere in the solar system, including the Earth, and you will see a central mountain peak. That's totally consistent with gravity. And you'll probably see them from time to time in these pictures I'm showing you here. The shiny object at the top, the half-shaded shiny object at the bottom that shows lines, symmetry, structure. I don't know what that is. I would like to ask NASA what that is. I would like to ask NASA what it is, because even though they're very infamous for never giving a straight answer, I think you would get an answer a lot quicker from NASA than you would from the United States military. And at least NASA's answer would probably be a little bit more entertaining.
Then something below caught their attention. Glistening in the sun at the very top of Mount Leibniz, the moon's highest visible peak, stood a strange tower. It closely resembled the man-made structure called the Eiffel Tower, which is a familiar landmark on Earth, in the city of Paris. Diving down for a closer look, Bleep and his friends found a huge reflecting mirror with a...
Oh yeah, do you see the two saucer-shaped objects in the lower left? What are they? I don't know. I have seen what people have called saucers that were photographed, taken from the same sources, taken from Clementine, taken from the United States Geological Survey website. I've seen pictures of what people have described as saucers taken from Clementine's photos. And to me, a lot of it doesn't even remotely resemble saucers. These two, I don't know, because these two have very straight lines. They have central circles. I believe that the the one that's more towards the larger one that is more towards the center of the photo, it displays what I feel is a very slight shadow on the ground. I believe it is the closer of the two objects. I don't believe it's a crater, because the circle you see in the middle, and I had described the phenomenon of ejecta, crater ejecta. That's not crater ejecta, that's a circle in the middle of a circle. You may remember your Bible, book of Ezekiel, a wheel within a wheel. Was he describing an object like that? I don't know. But you will see there are lines that emanate from the center circle to the outer circle, I believe consistent with a rounded, curved surface reflecting light. That's an opinion. The other well-defined circular object that is to the immediate left and, well, how about we say east and north to the larger circle, that's less well-defined but reflecting light in a similar manner, also displaying a circle within a circle. The lower portion is shaded, as is with the larger one, but more so because I don't believe they're craters. I believe one is a little higher than the other one, and we're seeing a perspective shot. We're seeing one closer to the surface of the moon and one that's higher up. So, what does this make? What's going on in this photo? Reconnaissance and recovery. Whatever that is, and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to speculate, because this picture is absolutely begging for speculation. You can see the area around the two objects that are on the ground. You can see the color of the lunar soil. It's very dark. In contrast to the darkness of the lunar soil surrounding these two objects that are either on or in, or partially in, the lunar soil, the reflectivity of these objects, I believe, personally, my own belief, is consistent with metal. I believe the object with the tendrils at the lower portion, the way it's shaded, I believe we're seeing the sun hitting an object on the surface of the moon, and the object reflecting back sunlight. I believe this object is metallic, possibly a polished, finished metal. Now this is, I'm going on observation here. I have absolutely nothing to back this up. This is what I see. And if there is an explanation to the contrary, there is a comment section below this video on YouTube. Feel free to comment. But I do not see anything about these two objects that are not consistent with some sort of metallic This is something metal some sort of finished metal, because you can see structure, especially in the object, the lower object. In fact, let's zoom in on that, and I want to take you also to a side-by-side comparison of an object on Mars. Now this is something that I actually showed in episode 1. It kind of went by a little quickly. I was focused more on the face on Mars. But this is an object, it shows similar symmetry to this object on the moon. Now, you can really argue as to what this object on Mars is, and that's fine. But what I want to illustrate here, Mars has an active weather system. Mars has wind. Mars has erosions. Past, possibly present, water erosion, wind erosion. There are active processes on Mars that could possibly account for something like this. There's never been anything on the moon that can account for the object on the right. And again, I invite NASA, I'll invite the United States Department of Defense. Explain this to me. As a taxpayer who helped to pay for that mission, I want an explanation. Tell me what that is. Tell me something, you know? As for our saucer-shaped friends, I don't know. To me, they're objects of curiosity. And I can't really get into or speculate what they are or who. But I think I know enough to know what a polished metal surface looks like in dark dirt reflecting back sunlight. And until I hear an explanation otherwise, that's what I believe.
However, imagine the many craters had been left long ago by violent volcanic eruptions, similar to those the planet Earth had experienced from time to time.
Okay. This next photo, if you were to go to either the Navy website or the Geologic Survey website, and you were to find this is actually, I don't know the name of the crater. This crater is located in the lower left of the map, and I'm really surprised that I haven't seen this anywhere else. As you can see, the crater is taken from two images. I would more or less assume that this is from two separate flybys, two separate passes, and that's not the issue. The issue is, what are those two lines? Oh, I'm going to put up a circle around it for emphasis so you can see what I'm talking about. If that's a shadow, that is a really, really odd shadow. It follows the curvatures of the crater down the wall, down the inside wall of the crater. Comes up and shoots straight out. What is that? Now, I can sit here and speculate and say that that is one really, really big termite with some really enormous antennae. That was a joke. You're talking about something here that's probably around the scale of, you know, half the Alaska pipeline. And to me, that's what I think they are. You know, it's some kind of pipe. I don't know. It struck me as very, very odd. And it struck me as something like, why haven't I seen this before? You know, and from other independent researchers and other, you know, why? That's a good one to overlook. I mean, I don't know what that is. It's certainly interesting. I don't know. I don't care to really speculate too far, as you know, like I said, it looks like some kind of piping. If it's a shadow, it's beyond odd. It's a shadow all the way up to the rim of the crater, and then what is it? You know, it juts straight out. Goes off in two different directions. It's really odd. It's really bizarre. Again, for your enjoyment, for your viewing pleasure, for your consideration, make of it what you will. Now, I had shown this image in the beginning, in the opening credits. I've never known what to make of this. I mean, this is probably one of the most famous Apollo images. This was taken from orbit, and there's actually a lot of things I can say about this image. You zoom in a little closer and you notice, hey, there's something there. Get in really close. What is that? I'm putting this picture out there right now. There are actually two different copies of this picture. This particular picture came from JPL's FTP site. This is a JPL picture. Its corresponding picture on the NASA website does not include this image, doesn't include this anomaly. In fact, there's a lot of nice little anomalies in this picture, and you can see quite a few of them when the picture is. You can see quite a few things in this picture when it's altered. There are lines that come up from the surface when you add a little bit of contrast. There's some interesting phenomenon around the Earth. It's actually my belief. I've been doing photo editing for more than 10 years. I'm familiar with the photo editing techniques that would have been around in the 60s. Have I done it? Have I used them myself? No. But I know what they look like, and I know what I'm looking at. and I know what I'm looking for. If the term cut and paste precedes working with computers by quite a bit, and you're looking at an example of it right now. It is my firm belief that a picture of the Earth was cut from another picture and pasted into this one. And I believe that it was pasted over something. And what you see here in close-up, this metallic shiny object that's just haphazardly floating around in the sky, I believe they didn't quite catch it when they were airbrushing it. I know I'm going to talk about this picture more someday, and if you want to consider that a little bit of a teaser for the future, because I'm still researching this picture. But there are a few things I'm certain of with it. And first of all, the Earth's cut out. It's a cut out Earth. It's pasted in and then airbrushed over to try to make it look consistent with the rest of the sky. It's a fake. And I say that with sadness and disappointment, I really do. And if I were going to, I've been an amateur astronomer since the age of 15 years old. I'm 40 now. And for me to say that I'm disappointed with NASA, that's sad. You know? It really is. I mean, to me, NASA is a profound disappointment. And for me to call this picture fake, I grew up with this picture. And for me to look at this picture and say that this is a forgery, I don't take any pleasure in that. I really don't. It's fake. I'm not saying that we never went to the moon. We did. What I'm saying is, we never got the whole truth. And I think that more and more people are beginning to wake up to the idea that we never heard the whole truth from the Apollo missions, or missions like Clementine that we're looking at today. I think there was a lot of disinformation and misinformation. And when I see an image like this, where I can pick it apart and say, the Earth was cut out, it was pasted over, and when you can see this metallic object floating out in the middle of nowhere that looks like it's slanting down towards the ground, what did they paste the Earth over? What's it covering up?
The tower was a scrap of notebook paper covered with the hasty scrawls of Dr. Destructo's own hand. To the others, it was only a jumble of strange symbols. But to Bleep, this was a flight plan, Destructo's own flight plan. And it told the colonel exactly where this master culprit had gone. It would take courage to follow Destructo now, for Bleep knew this place, knew it too well, and he was sure that fantastic terrors would be waiting out there.
Well, that pretty much wraps things up, I guess. Those were the Clementine images that I wanted to show you. And again, make of them what you will. gave you a brief glimpse into a possible future episode that will deal with imagery from the Apollo missions. And hope to see you again soon.
Been lying to them, and they listen to the folks that are trying to get them to see elements of the truth, and then of course they have to do their own homework, because you can't sit and listen to me, and believe me, you can't, you should not, but you have the net, you have Google. Google is your friend. Everybody say after me, Google is my friend. You can now cross-correlate from so many sources that you will get a gestalt that most of what I'm telling you is in fact verifiable and therefore real. And if that's true, you can't sit there on the couch watching television any longer. You've got to go out and do something, because 2012 is coming.